Welcome to Surrender School.
All right, we are on day 5. So today we're going to talk about setting ourselves up for success with regard to abstinence. Okay, so we do this through the use of routine and automaticity. Recovery doesn't just happen when we feel motivated. My motivation to be abstinent waxes and wanes, kind of depends upon what's going on during my day or in my head, between my ears. I cannot rely on motivation alone to keep me abstinent. Because life always happens. Life always gets lifey, no matter what, no matter how beautifully I plan, life happens. And I get thrown off. So when life gets lifey, my motivation gets flushed down the toilet. I'll just be honest with you. It's really hard to keep motivation in really tough or stressful times. Now, recovery happens when we set up our lives to support our abstinence, especially when we don't feel like doing the right thing, when we would rather self-medicate with food than do what we need to do to stay abstinent. And I'm going to say this. This is when routine becomes sacred, when we apply it at that time. I bet you never heard that before, that routine is sacred, or it can be. The dictionary definition of routine is a sequence of actions regularly followed, a fixed program. Routine is just a collection of actions you take automatically. You don't have to think about it. You don't have to struggle with it. Routine makes it easier to do an action. In Relapse, we get into lots of routines of overeating and binging, routines of buying binge foods, when and where. We get into routines of hiding our binge foods, stashing our supply. Our routines in Relapse make it easier for us to overeat and stay in relapse. Our relapse routines reinforce our relapse. But the flip side of that is also true. Abstinence routines can make it easier to get and stay abstinent. Setting ourselves up for success means putting routines in place that make staying abstinent easier. I'm not saying easy, but I'm saying easier. Routines that reinforce an abstinent life. An abstinent life. Think about that for a minute. Write that down. Journal on that at some point. What is an abstinent life? What does that mean to you? Okay. You want to have a routine that makes doing the right thing, the abstinent thing, the easiest thing to do. You don't want to set up your life where you make it hard to be abstinent, because at some point life's going to get lifey and you're going to say F it. And it's really easy to say that when you haven't set yourself up in such a way that most of your life reinforces your abstinence. We don't make, well, maybe I should just put this in the I don't make good decisions in the heat of emotion, hunger, or stress. That's why we pre-decide things by using routines. I'm going to say that again, because I love that little phrase there. We pre-decide things by using routine. Our routines become automatic, so there are less decision points where we can choose food over recovery. Decision fatigue equals a higher risk of relapse. You want to minimize the amount of time you have to think, actively think, okay, in order to be abstinent in this moment, what do I need to do? What do I need to have? You want it pre-decided so that you don't have to do that in the moment. The Latin definition of decision is to cut off or cut off choices, cutting you off from some course of action. And that's what we want to do with this deciding, this pre-deciding. We're cutting off the ability to easily go into the food. We make it harder to go into the food and easier to stay abstinent. We use structure to support our abstinence instead of willpower because we all know that willpower does not work against food. In the absence of structure, food addiction thrives. In the presence of structure, abstinence becomes possible. Not a guarantee. It's not a guarantee. This addiction kicks my ass frequently, but it becomes possible. Recovery thrives in rhythm. Now, don't get me wrong here. Routine is not rigidity. That is not what it is. Routine is more like a spiritual rhythm, a way of showing up for your body, your mind, and your spirit every day, no matter what. This is spiritual, not just practical. I know that's hard to believe because routine could just sound so freaking boring. Structure sounds so freaking boring. But it really is a spiritual practice because you are learning to support yourself with the help of your higher power. This is sacred work, what we're talking about doing here. And I say it's sacred because we are aligning ourselves with how our higher powers created us. Routine is not about perfection or punishment. It's about creating a container for our soul to breathe. Does that make sense? It creates the space for our soul to breathe when we're not scrambling willy-nilly trying to stay abstinent. Where are you resisting routine and structure right now? Take that question and journal on it. Why? Why are you resisting structure and routine along your abstinence? Well, I can give you a couple reasons. I mean, they're my own, but I bet you'll relate to some of them. Routine is boring. People think that routine puts them in a box. People think routine stifles their creativity. People think that routine will take away all of their fun. And to me, this resistance, these negative judgments on routine and structure, come from the old addict adage, I want what I want when I want it. The addict fights routine and structure like crazy. They don't see it as spiritual, they see it as punishment. Don't try to cage me in with routine and structure. That's what my addiction says to me. Oh, what about, going out to a restaurant? What about if friends come into town? What about all of those things can be handled? Routine is not rigidity. And I talked about having flexibility in your food plan. But I'm talking about routines daily in your life. Now, I'll give you some of mine. Okay. All right. So I am not wasting my time when I have routine and structure. I'm not wasting my time fighting my body, fighting my food chatter, fighting the world, fighting the food culture, binging, hiding a binge, recovering from a binge, feeling depression around having binged. Having an abstinence routine has given me tremendous freedom from all of that crap. Doesn't mean it doesn't sneak in, but most of the time I'm freed up from that crap. Okay, so I'm going to tell you some of my ridiculous routines around abstinence, just to give you, I'm not saying these should be your routines. I'm just wanting to give you some examples of some of the routines I have in my own abstinent life. And some of them are silly, but that's okay because they work for me. Okay, so I'll give you a list. So if it is Wednesday evening, I am making my grocery list. I have a routine for checking my supplies so that everything I need gets on that grocery list so I can purchase everything on that grocery list to make my food so I have abstinent food available to me. If it's Thursday afternoon, I am doing food prep. Here's my routine for food prep. First, I put on a cute apron. Then I put in my AirPods and I start playing some very highly motivating music. Then I check and make sure that my spouse is not around. And then I start singing at the top of my lungs to this music and dancing around the kitchen. I put out all my utensils and all my food containers for measuring individual servings, put that all on the counter. I get it all out and I start. Once I finish cooking, I clean up, I package up the food into my individual containers, stick them in the fridge, celebrate, high five Linda. That's my food prep routine. Takes me about 2.5 hours. If it is 6 a.m. in the morning, I am doing my quiet time routine. Start out with some morning prayers. I just added that one that I talked about yesterday, the declaration of willingness. I just added that one to my morning routine. Then I check my schedule for the day and I go into two-way prayer and I ask my higher power for guidance for the day. Not elaborate, but it is a routine and I do it without fail unless I'm deathly ill every morning at 6 o'clock, 7 days a week. If it's 9 p.m., I am in bed reviewing my day with my higher power. I tried so hard to have like a written 11th step routine, and I could not do it. So I had to move it to something that I could do. So I pop into bed. I say howdy do to my higher power. We review my day. You know, what went well? What needs work? What can I do better tomorrow? That's it. 3 little questions that I go over with my higher power every night. Takes me 3 minutes. If it's 3 p.m., I am on the patio thinking grand thoughts with my higher power. I'm usually drinking one of my favorite teas or a cacao drink that I drink. And what I mean by grand thoughts is I'm usually thinking about, okay, what kind of stuff do I want to do for surrender school? What's needed? What do I need? And so I think grand thoughts at that time and then laugh at myself. Every third day, I make my muffins for the next 2 days' breakfasts. I have a whole routine for my muffin making because it's a pain in my tuchus. And I need to make it as easy and as simple as possible. So I have all of my muffin making supplies in a caddy. You know those plastic caddies that sometimes people housework, they put cleaning supplies in them? I put all my muffin supplies in there, my spices, my measuring spoons, my whatever I need is in that caddy. So I reach down underneath the counter, plop my caddy on the countertop, put out a couple of bowls, and boom, I'm making my muffins. I have routines for going to restaurants. I always check the menu online before I go. I pre-decide what I'm going to order so that I don't get overly excited at all of the possibilities on the menu when I get into the restaurant situation, because I used to binge my brains out in restaurants. And so it's triggering for me. So I have to really take care of myself around going out to restaurants. And I want to be able to do that because that is how people socialize. And I want to be included in that. So I had to find a way to make it so that I could do it. So all of these silly routines that I have support my abstinence. I don't have to think about any of this. It just happens automatically. It takes practically no effort or psychic energy to do this stuff. And it doesn't matter if I feel like doing them or not. They are all part of the flow of my abstinent life. One of my favorite sayings is by Brian Johnson. And he says, "What does feeling like it have to do with anything?" Because it doesn't. It has nothing to do with recovery, feeling like it. If I waited till I felt like it to do anything in recovery, I would be doing very, very little. I wouldn't be in recovery. So that is one of my favorite sayings, and I will say it to myself when I bump up against some resistance. What does feeling like it have to do with anything? Just you do it. Okay. So we get to our question for today. Okay. I thought you'd appreciate this cartoon, Dave. Okay. Here's the journaling question. Does your resistance to structure and routine reflect your soul's needs or your ego's needs? What routines might support your abstinence? I'll put 5 minutes on the timer and we will see what we all come up with. I can't wait to hear the shares.
Thanks for recovering with us.